just a hack. He's just an absolute hack. And he gets his ass kicked by his teammates every week. It's just, it's terrible. It's just terrible.
Welcome back to another episode of the Believe in NFL Draft Prospects podcast. I'm Joe DeLeone here with Alex Gilstrap and Ryan Roberts. We are moving on with our positional rankings, wrapping up the running back week that we did. If you missed out on any of the comparison shows that we've already done, go check those out. But to wrap up this week, we're going to do exactly what we did with the quarterbacks. We are going to share guys that we're way too high on already, guys that we are much lower on than the consensus. Before we get to that, though, I just want to tell our listeners about Bet Online. Our partners at Bet Online continue to be the number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest sports developments, including updated odds on the NBA and NHL playoffs, Major League Baseball fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino and poker games. It's super easy to get started, so head to their website today or use your mobile device to join and use our promo code BELIEVE to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. Guys, this running back group is exciting. And Ryan and I talked about this group and the depth that it has, the talent that it has. Overall, I think there's a lot of guys that are going to be in consideration to be highly drafted. But I will also like to point out, we also have a lot of really big dudes. This is like a big, quite literally a big running back class with all these big bodies that are a part of this group of players.
Yeah, we got a lot of big, oversized running backs that Joe gets to overrate like he's been doing all week. So it's fantastic. Fantastic bit. I'm just happy that looking at our sheet here, I'm just happy that Alex didn't bring his SEC bias into the conversation today. That's good to see.
No bias here. We'll get into it, but this is a really exciting running back class overall. I think there's four guys to get really excited about as top 50 guys. Two, I think, are almost locks to be first round guys based on their talent level. And then there's some names that go down that I think are going to fill a role that we're going to talk about. I know Ryan has one listed as well. So this is going to be a really fun conversation, and fantasy dynasty, fantasy football players are really excited about this upcoming class because this running back class is ridiculous.
Fantasy doofuses love running backs, man.
What do you do with the
no, I'm just saying the analytics people hate all the analytics people hate running backs, and then the fantasy guys love running backs because that's where the points come from, man. That's crazy.
So I will say that I think you were the one who tweeted, Ryan, about like, oh, what position do you like? What's the one that you like to evaluate the most? I will say I think running back is my favorite one to evaluate, despite recently holding less value because I'm trying to be more realistic with the current wave of NFL offenses and usages for running backs. But throwback to, I think it was the TJ Yeldon, Amir Abdullah class when I first started trying to evaluate film. And then I didn't do it for a while. But back in high school, I think it was 2016, 2015 for that class. I remember I watched tape for those guys, and I started with running backs, and then I didn't get to any other position groups. All I did was running backs.
I graduated college in 2015.
Well, you're old.
Thanks for that. Appreciate you. Man, what is up with you and TJ Yeldon? You talk about him every single episode.
I don't know. It was my first draft crush, man. He was my first draft crush.
Was he a draft crush? Was he?
Yeah. But I only value. What would you say, Alex?
How'd that turn out?
Not very good. Well, I was like 17 or 16 at the time. I wasn't very smart. I still am not.
Joe swore never to watch film again after TJ Yeldon.
That's basically what happened.
Joe, you know when I was 16? What year I was 16?
1986.
Fuck you, dude. Fuck you. 2007, though. If that makes you feel old as well.
Does a little bit. I was barely walking then. Not necessarily. Because I would have been. Alex, you and I we're the same year, I think. 2007, we would have been 9 years old.
I was 8.
Okay.
I turned 8 that year. So
you make me feel old now. All right, let's talk about these running backs. We have some young guys here. Alex, we're gonna get to you in a second, but I'm gonna give my guy first. So my Zach Charbonnet from UCLA, if you listen to the comparison show, because Ryan, the way that I set this up, the way that I detailed this category of guys that we're way too high on. The point is to bring up somebody that we probably shouldn't be that high on, but we are for some weird reason. And I agree. I shouldn't be that high on Zach Charbonnet. But for some reason, I liked him more than Tank Bigsby, and I liked him more than you did. But for me, I see a guy like Charbonnet who's a big body. I think he's got more long speed than he deserves credit for. And the thing that I talked about on that comparison show is that I see him as a player like a Jordan Howard that can come in for a couple of years and be a big contributor because he's capable of doing that and then fall off the face of the earth. I don't see him having more than 2 good seasons in the NFL.
I'm going to let Alex go because he had some great facial expressions during your explanation.
Well, I didn't get a chance to listen to that episode, so hearing Charbonnet over Tank Bigsby caught me by surprise. I didn't expect it. I mean, Charbonnet he's good. He had a breakout year last year, obviously.
Former Michigan guy, Joe.
Yeah, former Michigan guy over at UCLA now. I just don't see like that extra oomph. I don't know, the extra gear, I guess, with him. And so like a lot of his success was predicated on the big play at the collegiate level in the Pac-12. But I just saw him as someone that like he got the ball and he went. He got off to the race, but there was not really anything after that. It's kind of a straight line runner. I didn't see much juice, wiggle, anything like that. And so, I mean, Jordan Howard, I guess, is fine, like career arc. I mean, I guess I don't argue with that, but you value that, Joe? You value Jordan Howard's career arc? I mean, he was okay.
But again, like you guys are getting hung up on the wrong thing. I'm saying I'm too high on him, and I probably shouldn't be. That's
like you realize it.
I realize that it's a problem. I don't know why. Just from before I even spoke to Ryan, it is kind of odd that I was drawn to him, and maybe it's the bias of, again, UCLA's offensive line wasn't that great, but I don't know why when you watch guys that when they have good runs, it's easy to get caught up in that. But he had a lot of wide open lanes, and as we talked about on that show, Chip Kelly's really good at scheming run games, and that's probably why he was put in those positions. But he didn't get a lot of carries. Like there's some games where he just didn't get that many touches, but he's still at or over 100 yards rushing. And he was able to have these long runs. And I get it, he doesn't have a lot of wiggle. I know that's a problem, but he's a big bodied running back. And I think you could plop him into a running back room that maybe has a smaller guy and he could work his way into getting some touches. I know that saying that Jordan Howard is not a career arc that is a valuable one. But what I said on the show was that running backs are very typically not going to get multiple contracts and they eventually get hurt. And I would rather have a guy who can provide an impact immediately and do something immediately. And if he doesn't pan out and I draft him on day 3, that's all I really want to get out of a guy like that. That's kind of where I sit with him.
Maybe the combination of James Cook and Zach Charbonnet would be what they wanted. Buffalo wanted Devin Singletary, Zach Moss to be. Maybe that's a good 1-2 punch.
I mean, I liked Zach Moss coming out of Utah. Rip, that wasn't a great one.
Sucks.
Joe, I would say this. You made fun of me for being the old guy on the podcast earlier. You're like stuck in the 80s with your running back evaluations. So.
Damn right, man. Before you continue, I will say I don't know what it is, but I have an obsession with big running backs. Like big, they don't need to be that fast. Like I love Derrick Henry. You loved Brandon Jacobs, didn't you? You were a big Brandon Jacobs fan. I didn't evaluate him, but I will say I'm obsessed with the fact that he's so freaking big. It's just like it's kind of funny to me that they're so big and they're playing running back when they should be playing tight end or something else.
I have a comp that just came to me for your boy Charbonnet. He's Jonathan Stewart in his last year in the NFL.
He's way bigger than Jonathan Stewart, though.
No, Jonathan Stewart was a hoss, man. You have no idea what you're talking about. He was like 235. Stewart was huge.
He's shorter.
It's like 6 foot, I think. I don't think he's that small.
I'm pulling this. He was 5'10", 240.
He was 5'10", really? I thought he was taller than that. Huh?
He was a big dude, though.
Yeah, big dude.
I don't know, but your comparison is that he couldn't move.
When he first came out of Oregon, he could move, and then his last couple of years, it was like, oh man, he's like Mike Tolbert now. Like it's not great anymore. Yeah.
Well, I'm not that. Look, I'm not. This is the one of the few shows where I'm not happy with that pick. I actually stood behind DJ Uiagalelei because I think that there's some value there. I'm not that happy with this pick. It just came to mind immediately, and I wanted you guys to pick me apart. But Alex, you next. You've been back for 2 episodes, and you're already putting 2 guys in for your categories. You just love to break the rules here. So let's hear about your 2 guys.
Yeah, so I mean, the one I really wanted to touch on is Syracuse's Sean Tucker. Last year, this is just plugging me a little bit. Last year, my guy for this selection, my guy was Kenneth Walker, and that one turned out pretty well. Someone that ran the ball very efficiently, didn't have quite the passing game volume that you would hope in a first or second round running back, but it didn't really matter for him in the grand scheme of things when it came to where he was selected and the valuation that was put on him come the draft. I think Sean Tucker's in a similar boat. He doesn't necessarily get the volume in the passing game, but as a true rusher, this guy's got it. I think this guy's got a little bit more juice than I expected. He's a bigger back. And when he gets out in front of the crowd, he runs away from guys. I saw that a couple times on his tape, and I was really, really impressed with his ability to find the open lane when it wasn't there. Obviously, you can't expect Syracuse to have the best offensive line playing in the ACC against some better programs over there. But Sean Tucker made do with what he had, and I was very, very impressed with what I saw on tape with him. And then I just wanted to simply mention Kendre Miller from TCU. With Zack Evans out of the building, he's going to be the focal point of that rushing attack, and that's a cat we need to start talking about. He's pretty good.
Joe, off air yesterday, you remember how I told you you need to watch?
Yeah, and I admittedly didn't get to really watch much Kendre Miller, but I did get exposed to him when I was watching Zack Evans, and I will say it was noticeable that when you're watching these guys rotate. I saw Kendre Miller. I was like, oh, I didn't even know that he was on the radar of being a prospect, and it's huge now that Evans is gone for him to step up.
He reminds me of Sony Michel, which I liked Sony Michel coming out of Georgia. I thought he was pretty good. I think that more injuries than anything have kind of derailed his career, but he's been pretty solid. When he's been healthy for the most part in the NFL. So, yeah, I like the Kendre Miller mention. Sean Tucker's a really interesting player because he actually runs track for the Syracuse program as well. He's a 6'4". He's a 6'4", 155-meter runner, so he can scoot a little bit, man. He's pretty fast. He's probably going to be a 4.3 high, 4.4 low type of dude, like probably 4.42-ish. Yeah, he can scoot a little bit, man. He's
for the size of his body. I mean, that guy can scoot.
Yeah, no, he can scoot. He reminds me a little bit. Here's another comp for you, Alex. He reminds me a little bit of Rashard Mendenhall, if you remember him coming out of Illinois. A little bit smaller than Mendenhall, but similar style. He's a one-cut runner. He's got a little bit juice to him. Quick throw out to – I know, Joe, we tore the offensive line class apart in our live last night, the offensive tackle group. I will say Syracuse's left tackle, Matthew Bergeron, is a very interesting player just for a future mention there.
Yeah, I mean, one other thing, you kind of mentioned it briefly, the one-cut ability he has. Syracuse runs a lot of zone concepts in their running game, and when this guy puts his foot in the ground and finds a lane – I don't want to see this guy in San Francisco because this is like that guy, that Elijah Mitchell that's going to be, a day 3 pick because of the depth and talent of this running back class. Is going to be a day 3 pick that goes to a San Francisco and blows up in his rookie season because this guy puts his foot in the ground, finds that lane, and he shoots through it. And with his size of body and his it's hard to bring him down when he accelerates through the hole.
So, Joe, you mentioned that there is nothing but bigger backs, right? That we're talking about a lot of bigger backs.
Bringing up a lot of small guys right now.
Yes.
And you're bringing up a really small guy.
I'm bringing up a really small guy. If you were tuned into the episode the other day where we talked a little Deuce Vaughn and Jahmyr Gibbs, I was the one personally that wanted to talk about Deuce Vaughn this week because I love Deuce Vaughn, man. I love his film. It is so much fun. I don't care. I know that he has a departmentalized role. I know he's going to be a third down back, a situational type player in the vein of a Darren Sproles or a Boston Scott for the Philadelphia Eagles, or maybe he turns into an Austin Eckler down the line as far as being that type of dude. I understand there's some limitations to a high volume carrier role, but my guy has got great passing prowess, instincts. He's got speed, he's got juice, and he's incredibly instinctive in the open field. So there is a role for a guy like a Deuce Vaughn. I said on the podcast I would draft him somewhere late day 2 as a offensive weapon in your arsenal. Mm-hmm. But the reason I'm saying that I'm maybe a little too high about him is I'm probably going to put him as my number 5-ish running back in this class, I believe, in summer. And that's probably a little high because he's probably never going to be a high volume ball carrier in the NFL. But I think he's going to be a very good player regardless of that role.
I don't know how, but I actually might be a little bit higher on Deuce Vaughn than you, because I had him. I was considering maybe slotting him at 4, and that's just kind of loosely off the top of my head. I loved him as well. Which is ironic because I'm telling you guys how much I love bigger running backs, but I'm slowly shifting away from that because my 2 favorite guys in this class are Jahmyr Gibbs and Deuce Vaughn. And I just pray whoever drafts him is a team with a creative offensive coordinator with at least a decent quarterback. Like, you know what? Actually, just kind of gives me those vibes, and this might be a little bit of a forced comp, and I'd love to hear. It kind of gives you those Tariq Cohen vibes, where he's just killing people in space. I know that's so easy to do; it's hard to pinpoint those. Small guys.
There's not a good comp for him though.
I know
size, he's different.
Yeah, the Darren Sproles comp was hard for me to get behind, but like I just trying to think of a small, compact dude who catches a lot of passes, has good hands, good route runner. But the big thing is, you give him a little bit of space and he is going to kill you. That home run threat, that's what I value the most when I'm looking at running backs these days, is can I get a guy who can score a touchdown if you put him in the right spot? Some of these other bigger guys, I don't think you can really do that, but you get that with Bijan, you get that with Jahmyr Gibbs, you get that with Deuce Vaughn.
Can we do a quick game? Can we do a quick game, Joe? And then I'll let Alex finish up on the point. Ready?
Okay.
So in a vacuum, they're different players. I just want you to say who you think is a better prospect for their role. Ready? Let's go Deuce Vaughn or Zack Evans.
For his role? Deuce Vaughn.
For his role. But the problem is, like, that question is because Zack Evans, I can't say exactly what his role was because he was misused at TCU. They barely used him. When you clarify, what do you mean by that?
Like, okay, so, I mean, Zack Evans profiles to being a higher level ball carrier, potentially, right? Like, he could be a 200-plus carry a year guy, if he hits his ceiling. Like, that's his type of role, you know? I'm sorry. It's not it's not perfect because they're both different players and they're both going to assume different roles. I think I'm just trying to figure out exactly where you have him pegged. Like, do you like him more as a prospect than a Tank Bigsby?
Yeah, because I wasn't that high on Tank Bigsby.
You hated Tank, man.
I was just a little underwhelmed, a tiny bit.
What was his name again? He had a great name.
Javarian or something like that?
Chartavius or something like that?
Chartavius, maybe?
I just remember I read it and I thought it sounded like he was a like a carnivore or something. But yeah, it was great.
Alex, what are your thoughts on Vaughn?
It was Cartavius.
Yeah. You keep cutting you off. Alex, go ahead.
No, you're good. My thing with Deuce Vaughn is we mentioned it briefly. The sample size of guys that fit his size profile to have success in the NFL is limited, but it's guys like Tariq Cohen. It's guys like Darren Sproles who have been really, really impactful for their teams. And I think Deuce Vaughn, personally, at that size profile, has a chance to be the best of them that we've seen in the modern NFL, because I think this guy has some special traits to him. And I think if you put him in a similar role to what those guys, had in their respective organizations, I think Deuce Vaughn has a chance to be very, very good for that role, which is why he warrants consideration for a top 5 running back, even though he's simply a pass catching, down running back.
And the thing too with him is you might not get, you're probably not going to get like a 1,500 yard, 1,200 yard rusher out of him. But I think the value you get with a player like that is like 800 and 700, like something like that when he hits close to his ceiling or at his ceiling is like an equal total for receiving yards and rushing yards just because of his usage. Like, again, he's not going to be an every down guy, and he's not even an every down guy right now, but you put him out there and he takes advantage of those touches. Like, he could very well dominate in both categories.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk about I just realized I left quarterback in the doc. Running backs that we just don't get the appeal. So these are guys that aren't necessarily getting hyped up, but just guys that are talked about near the top or around the top of the class, or just in general, are getting positive buzz that you maybe don't really understand that positive buzz. My player that I decided to go with was Blake Corum from Michigan. And it's not that I didn't like Corum as a prospect. I just, from what we saw from him last year, it feels like we're already giving him consideration to be on the cusp or around the top 5, or at the very edge of the top 5. I watched him, and he's a small back. He does have that second gear, which you like. And when he hits those holes, he's able to accelerate. But for a guy that's small, I didn't think he was that elusive. And the other thing as well, and I'm just trying to pull my notes here, the other thing that I got from him as well is I thought that he wasn't really doing a whole lot for me trying to make guys miss. Like, he was able to cut and obviously get away from tacklers. But like, I'm watching him in some of these one-on-one situations, he wasn't creating that separation for himself. He needed those open lanes in order for him to attack them. I didn't really see him as good as I think people were making him out to be.
It's an interesting one. I kind of like Blake Corum, to be honest. I don't know. He's like a shorter, stockier built type of kid. He's about 5'8", 200 pounds. I think he's pretty quick, and I think he's got okay contact balance. I just think he's good on the second level. So I think he's a departmentalized player. I mean, I agree, Joe. If you're rating him as a top 5 back in the class, then yeah, it's way too much. I agree completely on that one. But I do like him for his role, personally. I think that he has kind of space elements to his game that is pretty intriguing.
Well, the big thing, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, Alex, but like, the big thing for me is that he is great at the second level, but I didn't like how he is trying to navigate through holes. Like, that's where I was held up, and he just didn't do a whole lot in those situations. And if he had to make a linebacker miss one-on-one, I watched him get tackled most of the time.
Yeah, Corum for me is not someone I'm willing to go one way or the other right now. I'm kind of a wait and see. I need to watch a little bit more. I know he's raved about football character-wise. Michigan coaching staff loves Blake Corum, and I think that's going to go a long way for him and his prospects of going into the NFL draft. And he's going to be the guy this year. I have a feeling it's going to be the thighs. Saquon had it. A.J. Dillon had it. Blake Corum is built on the lower half. This guy's, like you said, that compact build. He meets that 200-pound threshold that people put on the running back position at 5'8" is pretty impressive. This guy's got some thick lower half, and I'd like to see a little bit more use, because I think his athletic ceiling is pretty up there as far as his wiggle and stuff, making guys miss. And I don't know if I've quite seen that yet. I see it on like you said, in open space. And I think right now that's the kind of player he is someone you want to just put the ball in his hands in open space and let him maneuver. But I want to see a little bit more on the first level, as y'all both, I think, had mentioned there, navigating space and finding the open lane rather than getting put in space.
I think he's got some juice, though, on the plus side. I think he's, I don't know, Joe, what do you think he runs? 4.4? 4.4 flat?
Yeah, that would probably be the most I'm willing to give him is 4.4, 4.45 maybe.
It's fair.
Yeah.
It's fair. I think he's got good explosion, though. Good explosion to him.
Just to wrap him up, I have like a kind of like a weird thought for him. I think I'd be more into him if he wasn't as small as he was. Like, he almost plays like he would be 6 foot and like 210, if that makes any sense. Because like, he just, I know it sounds a little bit convoluted, but if he was bigger, I think it would be easier to be high on him, because he's so small. He doesn't have strength as much as a bigger back would, and he doesn't have a lot of size to really carry any weight to, drive through a tackler. So that's why I'm a little bit iffy on him trying to hit holes and break, because he can't break any tackles with his power. He has to rely on his quickness, and I don't think that quickness is enough to get away from linebackers in close situations.
Joe, were you a fan of the thighs?
Next person, Alex. I'm actually pretty shocked.
Yeah,
you decided not to dive into the Georgia bias, because we know you're a UGA fan. Yeah. You went with a UGA guy here. What happened?
Yeah, I keep it real at the end of the day. Kenny McIntosh for me he's gotten a lot of hype this summer, this early portion of the summer, and I think those dynasty fantasy football guys are really, really high on him, the ones that claim to watch film. And this is all from live viewing, because like you mentioned, as a Georgia fan, I'm watching nearly, if not all, Georgia games live. And McIntosh is someone that's never really stood out. He's always had super, super high expectations coming into the program. Oh, this could be the next, Nick Chubb, Todd Gurley-esque, as far as pedigree goes. And he's been buried behind the likes of James Cook and Zamir White, who were heading that running back room just last year. And then DeAndre Swift, was a player in that room when he first came in, I believe. So, hasn't really had the workload, but even when he, using him in sparingly, like throughout the game, there's nothing that says this is a day 2 running back to me at this point. I think a lot still needs to be proven, especially given that he has one of the best offensive lines in college football. He has, so many guys around him that should take the pressure off of him. And I just haven't seen him do anything further than what is given to him, if that makes sense. The offensive line gives him some space. He takes that space, but he doesn't do anything else once contact's there. I'm lacking in the elusiveness and the contact balance, ability to break tackles, part of his evaluation for me to really think that this is someone worth a top 75, top 100 draft pick at this point. Of course, him and Kendall Milton are going to probably head that running back room at Georgia, who's another name that is going to be in the mix here. So, I mean, it's kind of a wait and see. Zamir White, James Cook are out of the building. So I feel like people are getting a little bit too ahead of themselves on Kenny McIntosh because I've still yet to see it.
Kendall Milton's going to be a pretty good player, though, when he puts it together. He's talented.
A little bit bigger, yeah.
Yeah. McIntosh reminds me of Sevyn Banks last year coming from Ohio State, the corner. It was like, oh, man, Ohio State always has corners. He's the next guy. And it's like, I don't think he's actually the next guy. Yeah, it's very lazy. But, I mean, you see those pipelines and people just go back to those pipelines. It's like Notre Dame at offensive line or tight ends, cornerback at Ohio State or LSU. Like, it's the pipeline that's created. Right. Exactly.
And Georgia's running back situation is the same way.
Exactly. Right, and it's so easy when a team like that recruits well. Now, I think I haven't watched McIntosh, admittedly, but I will say we tend to over-evaluate guys that were big recruits, and it's so easy to be like, look, this kid was one of the top running backs in his class. We got to bring him up, but sometimes that doesn't always translate.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm interested to see Georgia this year. I know we haven't really talked about that much, but now we have Alex on. It's probably a good talking point for like a minute. Alex, do you think they take a big step back? Like, not big as in like they're going to be a 500 team, but like 9-3? Is that like unrealistic?
Stetson Bennett's their quarterback, so yes.
I think if you take a look at their schedule, there's realistically only 2 games that they had the potential to lose, I think, just because of the talent they're going to turn out. I think this is going to be a New Year's 6, maybe a borderline playoff team. I don't think they're like, obviously any year that you're in the SEC and you're playing against Alabama in the SEC championship, you're not going to be a lock to be in the college football playoff. But I think this is a team that's going to range between probably the 4th and 12th best team in the nation.
I think this is a big year for the program, though, because you're coming off a national championship game. And this year is going to be very indicative of whether they have completely just built a program that has longevity, right? Has the stay power, or if they were a great team, but a bit of an anomaly because then they lose 15 players and they come back to earth a little bit, like it's going to be a very interesting year to watch Georgia football.
Yeah, there's a lot of shoes to fill, especially on the defensive side of the football. Like you said, if they want to be in the ranks of the Alabamas of the world, they're going to have to prove that they can step up when it's their time to go. So, and it's not just like you said, an anomaly that we had all these guys that were really, really good football players all at once that all happened to go to the draft the same year.
Ryan, what's your guy so we can wrap up here?
Yeah, Devon Achane is how you pronounce it, apparently.
Did we determine that for sure? It's Achane?
Yes. I asked somebody on Twitter, and I got multiple responses back from Texas A&M folks that all said it was Achane. So he's going to come in with a lot of hype here. He is a 5'9", 185-pound back, so he's a little bit smaller, but he's a 10, 100-meter runner. So he is blazing fast, man. He's close to Olympic caliber as far as a 100-meter runner for Texas A&M. I do not think he quite plays to that speed. I think he's fast, but I don't think he is elite speed on film, which, I just don't see 10, 100-meter. And he's very small, doesn't break tackles. and he's not really that dynamic in the passing game either. So I'm looking at a home run or nothing type of runner, and I don't really see much value outside of him because I just don't think he has great contact balance, physicality. He's fast, but that's not what makes a running back great. So
yeah, he gets the billing that like the Wan'Dale Robinsons and Kadarius Toney get as being a weapon. And I agree with you with the speed. Like, I don't know why this came to mind when watching him, but Travis Etienne, what did Travis Etienne end up running in the combine?
4.4.
It was 4.43 or 4.44.
He wasn't. He didn't go to the
I feel
combine.
like Etienne felt a lot faster on field than Achane.
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 Yep. Mm-hmm.
I just feel like Travis Etienne, and he was known for speed, but I mean, just comparing a speedy playmaker to a speedy playmaker, I felt like someone like a Travis Etienne coming out felt a lot faster just watching. Achane doesn't run away from, like, I felt like he didn't run away from people the way I expected with the background that he has. And someone that, that's what he's going to rely upon to, with his draft stock coming into next year. I wasn't really impressed with him either. I think this is someone that is going to get that billing. Like I said, Wan'Dale Robinson was taken on day 2. Kadarius Toney was a first-round pick the year prior, both for the Giants. So maybe this is a Giants prospect right here.
Oh, God.
It is a Giants prospect.
Stop it.
But this is someone that you want to use in a lot of different ways and can be just a weapon, if not anything, a decoy for other guys you have on the offensive side of the football. So, I was expecting a little bit more. Doesn't have contact balance. That's just not the game you're going to get from. You're going to get someone that you're trying to scheme up touches in space and let him outrun folks. And I just wasn't quite as impressed with the speed as I thought I would be.
This kid could break the 40-yard dash record, but I don't think he's a great football player. I think he's just
fast.
I mean, Joe, he runs a 10-100 meter, man. Like, he is silly fast. Like, it is. I mean, he's going to run 4.2s at a minimum, in my opinion. Like, he is that type of dude. I don't think he's a great. I don't see any standout traits. And again, like on film, thought he's fast, but I don't think he's elite fast on film. Like I really didn't. So
that's so weird.
It's
Yeah,
like the pads come on, and it's like
I think
too heavy for him.
I think he's a 4.2 kid off of the field and a 4.4 flat kid on the field. Like that's what I feel about him. And 4.4 is still fast. Like he's a fast dude. I'm not saying he's not, but how is he going to create? I don't think he's creative as a runner, and he doesn't have size to him. So, like, how is he going to create yardage? I don't know. I don't see it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's going to wrap us up on at Joe DeLeone, at Alex Gilstrap, at Rise and Draft, at NFL Prospects Pod. Thank you for tuning in.